Hi, I'm Matthew Schwartz with Information Security Media Group, and here at our studio at RSA 2022, it's my pleasure to welcome Mark Sangster, Chief of Strategy, Vice President, Adlumin. Mark, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
So we're going to be talking about some great stuff, breaches, ransomware,
Yep.
but I want to just focus on, I guess, at the high level, we're going to be talking about how cybersecurity is not an IT problem to solve, but more of a business risk to manage. And I use that framework because I've been a journalist for a long time. When I first started covering data breaches, I didn't think it was going to be something I'd be covering for very long.
And that changed.
Yes, exactly. And then we had ransomware come into the picture. Why are we still talking about data breaches and ransomware, do you think? Why are companies still getting hit?
So I think there's two sides to the same coin. And the first side, of course, is the industrialization of cybercrime, right? So we've seen these with these ransomware gangs that we have to deal with, like Conti and DarkSide that took down the Colonial Pipeline, et cetera. And they're building an economy. They are the Misfortune 500 is kind of what I jokingly call them, right? So they use the same kind of tactics. They have ways of reselling their technology and using that revenue to develop new bad guy technology and create an ecosystem. And that's why from that side, it's getting worse. Now on our side, I think the problem is the majority of companies, and why we say this is a business risk, is the majority of those leaders just don't think this is something that they are going to face, right? We're too small, we're in the Midwest, how would someone in Russia even know we exist? We're not a bank. And I hear these misconceptions constantly, and if you don't think you're at risk, you're not gonna take any actions to protect your business, which leaves you open to victimization by these very clever and very armed, sophisticated gangs.
I love that Misfortune 500. I'm going to be using that in the future. Now, when I do speak with organizations, though, I see an increasing awareness of what they should be doing to mitigate risk. Obviously, not everybody, but I think we have seen an uptick in the use of backups. We do have more organizations thinking about cyber insurance, at least. Is that sufficient?
So it's a bit of a yes and no here, right? Or if I was to use legal parlance, it depends. So the problem is backups are only going to get you so far because criminals, as one of their tactics, they impair those defenses, right? They disable them or they poison them. They know exactly what to do. And frankly, they can walk a show floor. They can go out and buy security technology and reverse engineer how it works. In fact, Conti and the leaks that came out subsequent to the Russian invasion of Ukraine showed that, right? That they were tricking companies into giving them technical walkthroughs to providing the kind of information they could use to reverse engineer that. Now, on the insurance side, the story is a little more complex. Am I saying you shouldn't have insurance? No, you should absolutely have cyber insurance. But the big challenge here is if we look at the data over the last 2 years, 75% of all the policies that had claims set against them lost money for the insurer. Now, how many insurance companies do you know that are in the business of losing money? This means the premiums are going to start increasing, the coverage is going to decrease, or it's going to move into things like riders and additional coverage that you have to pay for, and the bar to make a successful claim is increasing. There's this concept of duty of defense because insurers are trying to get you out of this notion of, well, you know, it's fatalistic, right? I was driving, I had a blindfold on, I wasn't paying attention, but you know, it doesn't matter. I have, you know, auto insurance and health insurance. And that sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly how we're operating when it comes to our businesses, right? We're doing the same thing. We're putting the blindfold on, hitting the gas and going through that red light and just praying nobody hits us. And that, you know, and that's just I think a fatalistic approach, but you know, ultimately it's going to make you pay.
The writing is definitely on the wall with cyber insurance. As you say, it's not a sustainable business model as it has been practiced. So as you're talking with business leaders, what are some of the things you're recommending to them to better protect the organization, given some of these realities that you've just been articulating?
Yeah, so the first one is recognize you are a target, right? And understand what are criminals going after. So what assets do you have? Think about, you know, follow the money, right? So it may not be money, but it might be healthcare records or intellectual property or schematics or whatever it is that's specific to your business. Those documents, those assets, they generally have obligations that come with them, right? And easy connections here, right? Financial information has regulatory obligations, or in healthcare, protecting private healthcare information and records. That's an obvious one, but that's expanded dramatically, right? So now we have things like contractual obligations with our clients or through a supply chain and so on. And so you really have to understand those. And once you do that, now I can say, all right, I know the threats I face, I know what I have to protect, and when I don't, what the consequences of that are. Now I can build a program for my security team or through my security team that may make sure that we focus on what matters, we protect what matters most to us, and we're aligned to the objectives of the business.
Adlumin, so how specifically are you working with customers? How are you helping them respond to these sorts of things?
So I'm going to start with one of the misconceptions that I talk about all the time. And we read them in the headlines, right? After a major attack, it's always, well, there were no signs, right? We left work on Friday and everything was fine. We came back to work on Monday and we were shut down. Well, that's simply not true. There were hundreds of signs. Things like concurrent logins, failed multi-factor login attempts, new users appearing in an Active Directory, code appearing, scripts, etc. There were lots of signs, and that's what we do a good job of. So Adlumin's managed detection and response service and products, it's based on our SIM, so our logging platform that's actually a combination of a source, so the orchestration and the automated response piece. That gives you the single pane of glass to be able to quickly identify suspicious activity, go in, determine what is actually happening, and if there is something malicious there, being able to stop it. And that's the key. You're always going to get breached on some level, right? They're going to get into your environment. This comes down to time. The faster you catch it, the less issue it's going to be for you, right? Or it's like cleaning up spilled milk. And if you don't, that's when these things linger in your environment. That's when they metastasize and they turn into these massive ransomware outages that we read about.
You've used the term duty of defense.
Yes.
That stuck out to me. So how do you help provide a duty of defense?
So Adlumin over the years has focused on highly regulated clients, so in financial services and in healthcare and legal and others. And because of that, we're sort of at the sharp end of the spear, as it were, to understanding how we deal with sort of compliance, how we work to mitigate some of the risks that they may face. And so into our platform, we've built what we call continuous compliance reporting. And effectively, it's a live snapshot. So at any time, you can go in and you can look at reports that are designed and customized for the specific regulators with which you work, or the ones that you built custom for your business, and see where you stand. So do you have obligations you're not meeting? Are there violations like policy violations? Are there triggers that have been flipped here where this means, you know what, we may have to report this? And if we do, we have all the information we need. We're armed to be able to go in and say, look, this is what happened. Here's the steps we took. Here's the forensics to demonstrate that duty of defense, that we didn't just sort of sit back and wait to call our insurer once things got bad. And that is what's going to save you. That's when regulators look and they say, you know what, you took the right options here. You did what you could, and that's reasonable, right? That's what you're going to have to do when you face some of these sophisticated crime gangs or like a state-sponsored actor or something like that, where you know they're coming in with resources far beyond your business. And that's the best you can do here, right? Be prepared, and you practice, and you're ready with that kind of research and that kind of reporting, because as I say, you don't practice until you get it right. You continue to practice until you can't get it wrong.
Fantastic. And as you say, demonstrating to regulators, amongst others, that you're doing the right thing. Because as we know, attacks keep going up, don't they?
Absolutely, they're not going anywhere.
Okay. Well, Mark, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I've been speaking with Mark Sangster of Adlumin. I'm Matthew Schwartz with Information Security Media Group. Thanks very much for joining us.